All right, welcome. Today, we're going to put you right in the manager's seat. And not just any manager. You're in one of the most powerful positions in business. You're a monopolist. You get to set the prices, right? But as you're about to see, that incredible power comes with a fundamental and honestly, a pretty counterintuitive dilemma. So let's really dig in and break down how you navigate.
So here's our game plan. First, we need to understand the world you're operating in. So we'll compare a monopoly to a perfectly competitive market. Then we'll get into the core trade-off, the one that every single monopolist has to deal with. From there, we're going to crunch the numbers and prove a really critical piece of math. And then, this is the important part, we'll unpack the why behind those numbers. And finally, we'll tie all of this back to the one thing that actually matters in business: profit.
Okay, so if you really want to think like a monopolist, you have to first understand the environment they live in. What is it that makes their world so fundamentally different from, say, a farmer selling wheat? Well, it all comes down to one thing: the demand curve they face.
Now, the strategic difference here is it's just massive. You see, in a competitive market, you're what we call a price taker. The market dictates the price, and you just decide how much to sell at that price. You're along for the ride. But as a monopolist, you become a price maker. You are the market. You get to set the price. Now, that sounds like the ultimate power, doesn't it? But, and this is a huge but, it comes with a massive catch that we are going to spend the rest of the session unpacking.
And that catch? Well, it leads us directly to the central conflict for any manager in a monopoly position. Because you face the entire market demand curve, you are bound by its rules. And that creates this fundamental, inescapable trade-off between price and volume.
So here's the absolute key takeaway. If you want to sell more stuff, you have to lower your price. But, and this is the part that trips people up, you can't just lower the price for the next customer who walks in the door. No, you have to lower it for everybody. Think about it. You're Apple. You want to sell more iPhones. You can't just offer a discount to one new buyer. You have to cut the price for the model, which means all of your existing loyal customers now get it for cheaper, too. And that completely changes your revenue calculation. This is the monopolist's dilemma.
Look, theory is great, but as managers, you live and die by the numbers. So let's make this real. Let's get our hands dirty and walk through a very specific scenario step by step so we can see the single most important calculation in monopoly pricing in action. Imagine you're the manager of this incredible exclusive villa, okay? In scenario A, you're selling 10 rooms a night at a cool 5 million rupiah each. Simple math, your total revenue is 50 million. But you've got one empty room, that 11th room, and you really want to fill it. You know that to attract one more customer, you've got to lower the price. So in scenario B, you drop it to 4.9 million. But look closely, that new lower price applies to all 11 rooms. Your new total revenue is now 53.9 million rupiah. So the big question is, what did you actually gain from making that move? How much additional revenue did you bring in? Well, we just take the new total revenue and subtract the old one. 53.9 million minus 50 million gives us a marginal revenue of 3.9 million rupiah. That is the true financial benefit you got from selling that last room.
But wait a minute. Hold on. Let that sink in for a second. You sold that room for 4.9 million rupiah. The customer handed you 4.9 million, but your company's total revenue only went up by 3.9 million rupiah. So where did the other million rupiah go? This isn't a trick question. This is the absolute core of monopoly theory.
And this right here reveals the iron law of being a monopolist. Your marginal revenue, that's the actual extra money you get from selling one more unit, is always less than the price you charge for it. Understanding this gap is everything. Ignoring it is a mistake that will absolutely destroy your profits. Okay, so we've established the what. We know that marginal revenue is less than price. But as a manager, you can't just stop there. You have to know why. To make good decisions, you have to understand the forces under the hood. So now, we're going to deconstruct that marginal revenue calculation. You see, that change in your total revenue isn't just one thing. It's actually the result of two opposing forces, kind of like a tug of war. On one side, you have a positive force. We call it the output effect. And pulling against it is a negative force, the price effect. Let's look at each one. All right. First, the good news, the output effect. This part is super simple, really intuitive. You sold one more unit, that 11th room, And the revenue you got from that specific sale is the price you sold it for, 4.9 million rupiah. That's a direct positive gain for your revenue. Easy enough.
Ah, but here's the sneaky part. This is the hidden cost. This is the answer to our missing million question. It's the price effect. To get that 11th customer in the door, you had to give a discount of 100,000 rupiah. But not just to them, you also gave it to the first 10 customers, the ones who would have happily paid the full 5 million. So you lose 100,000 rupiah on each of those 10 rooms. 10 times 100,000, that's a revenue loss of exactly 1 million rupiah. That is the price you have to pay to get more volume. And now, when you put it all together, the math is just crystal clear. Your final marginal revenue is the positive output effect, the 4.9 million gain, minus the negative price effect, the 1 million loss. And the net result? It's the 3.9 million rupiah we calculated earlier. See, it's not magic, it's just the predictable result of these two forces battling it out.
Okay, we have spent this entire session focused on revenue, marginal revenue, total revenue, but let's be honest. As senior managers, you know that revenue is only half the story. As they say, revenue is vanity. The real goal, the actual measure of your success as a leader, requires a really important strategic pivot. And this quote right here, it says it all. You know, it's tempting to just try and drive revenue as high as possible. It looks good on a chart, right? But your ultimate goal isn't to get the biggest number at the top of the income statement. It's to find that perfect combination of price and quantity that gives you the largest possible gap between your total revenue and your total costs. It's all about maximizing profit. And that brings us to the perfect cliffhanger. We have totally dissected the revenue side of this puzzle. We get the trade-offs, we understand the math, we know about the price and output effects. So I'll leave you with this question. What is the next piece of information you, as the manager of this villa, absolutely must bring into your analysis to find that sweet spot, that point of maximum profitability? That, of course, is the whole other side of the ledger, your costs.